Hello and welcome to the next episode of the Nerdy Misfits podcast. I'm Matt.
I'm Connor. But yeah, guys, welcome back. We have what we hope to be not really a series, because I don't think we're going to be doing it over and over and over again, but it's going to be a reoccurring theme, I would say, for us on different episodes, where we're going to be doing our first top 5. How's that sound to you, Matt?
I'm excited, man. Honestly, to give you guys, the listeners, thing, we don't know what is on each other's lists. This is complete. We made these lists in private, so this whole episode is just going to be us talking about what our top 5 Marvel storylines are in comics. We're going to be talking about like what number 5 is for each of us first. We'll converse, and then we'll go into both of our 4s, 3s, 2s. Honorable mentions if we got one. If not, we'll just go right into number 1.
That's fair, yep. And we hope to be doing this for other series as well. Right now we're doing Marvel stories for comics. Obviously that leaves the giant opening that probably there will be a DC version.
Yes, and potentially talking about the movies in a different episode as well.
And you never know, we might do other top 5s of stuff, maybe Star Wars films,
Star Wars,
whatever.
Shonen Jump, like the lists, the top 5s are endless.
It's definitely just, it's a good I think it's a good way for me and Matt to kind of see where each other are at when it comes to the things. Because Matt's obviously way more into comics based on, if this is your first podcast you're catching of us, Matt is definitely the comic guru in this tandem, in this duo.
Meanwhile, Connor is very much the anime manga expert.
So for us, I think it'll be interesting to see what each other has on their top 5 lists respectively for those. So we think this will be the first of hopefully many if you guys like it.
Do you want to start, Connor? What is on your Marvel comic book storylines, what is your number 5 and why?
My number 5 is Death of Wolverine.
Ooh, okay.
It's one of the first, well, it's short, but it's nonetheless, it's one of the first complete storylines I collected as a comic book. And honestly, Wolverine's always been a character I liked growing up. Obviously, like the X-Men films and stuff, like how could you not love Hugh Jackman, I mean, look at him with Ryan Reynolds. They're adorable. You can't.
Ryan Reynolds and Hugh Jackman.
What a duo.
What a great, just love couple.
But obviously Wolverine's an awesome character. He's an awesome character.
Yeah.
I he's such a cool character, cool powers. And when I heard that he was dying, because at the time that was what was hyped up, I was like, as someone who was just getting into comics, I was like, wait, what?
How can they kill this man who's pretty much immortal? Wait a second.
It's like, what do you mean? And they had the holographic covers. Oh, it was so cool. And I think for me, it was a story that was short.
And it was like 4 issues. There was like a 5 or 6 issues leading into it, I think. But the actual story was 4 issues. But I feel like
what made it good was that you didn't need to know a lot. You could have been a new reader, like me, and you could have picked it up, read it as its own story, and been like, whoa. I don't know if there's really anything else to say. Like, that's how I genuinely felt. I was like, whoa, that was not what I was expecting, but also cool.
That's fair.
Because you've read Death of Wolverine.
Yeah. I've read Death of Wolverine. When I had my comics, I had the issues that had the front covers of him slowly losing his claws. It was like 3 months left to Wolverine die, and he had like his 3 claws.
Oh, like the countdown.
The countdown, yeah. And then 2 months, he only had 2 claws left, and they were like exploding, kind of thing like that. So it was super cool that way. But yeah, no, I read Death of Wolverine as well. Yeah, great storyline.
It kind of makes you want to read, like when you read it too. It makes you almost want to read like Old Man Logan and stuff too, like because you're just like, wow, what a cool character.
What a great character, just outside of just the Hugh Jackman appearance. Like,
well, and outside of just all of the X-Men and stuff too, like Wolverine as a whole is just he's a very complicated and interesting
layered character.
Yeah, for sure.
100%.
How about you, Matt? What's Matt's number 5?
A Superior Spider-Man. Which I'm assuming is somewhere on your list because I know you're a big Spider-Man fan.
Absolutely, yeah.
But yeah, my number 5 is Superior Spider-Man. For those who don't know, it was a story written by Dan Slott. I don't want to go into too much detail because I know Connor will go off about it as well.
Yeah, Dan Slott's a great writer.
But Dan Slott, phenomenal writer for Spider-Man especially. Basically, Superior Spider-Man is literally the consciousness of Dr. Otto Octavius, a.k.a. Doc Ock. His consciousness is in Peter Parker's body. And it goes on, I think, for 32 issues or so. Around there, I think there's 5 or 6 volumes. 6 volumes if you include the couple issues they had with the whole Spider-Verse storyline.
They're really skinny.
They're really skinny. They are. But, yeah.
And overpriced.
Just,
Sorry, Marvel, but for how small they are, they're a little expensive.
But they know people were going to buy it, so they knew what they were doing.
But yeah, great story. It's like, I think it's 7 volumes.
I think it's, yes, something like that. Yeah, 6 or 7 volumes. But great story. And, like, it was something that you got to see more, like, an intense version of Spider-Man, too. You kind of saw, like, new suit. He had, like, these little, like, claws almost at the edge of the fingertips.
It was like, like the Iron Spider-esque. And then
darker.
The thing that made it cool also was, like, literally the name is Doc Ock's goal was to be the superior Spider-Man. And he took that to a T where he's like, I'm going to have a better life than Peter Parker had as himself.
Going to finish college for him,
I'm going to be a better Spider-Man. I'm going to have a better Spider-Man suit. Like,
going to open his own company. Like, he did so much for Peter.
Took it to heart.
Exactly. He was truly the superior Spider-Man. But yeah, moving on to number 4s. Do you want me to go first for this one, or?
Oh, I can go.
Yeah, what's your number 4?
So for me, number 4 is probably Civil War. The original Civil War storyline.
Yep.
I think it's always cool to see the good guys disagree. You know, like, I think that always having the good guys just agree with everything is not realistic. Whether you're heroes or not, there's going to be conflict. And I think that in my opinion, I thought the way that Civil War, the comic, was done better than the MCU. I do think that the MCU was good, and they had to make it relatable to how the MCU, as the story progressed, like how they would relate and why things were going to happen, like why the Sokovia Accords and stuff were created. Like, that made sense for them. But when it came to the actual comic, obviously it can be a lot more complex and layered. And I just liked the idea that it made sense to me in my head. Like, okay, like, if it was real life, yeah, you can't just have vigilantes, really, right? Like, it makes sense, honestly.
Plain and simple, honestly. Like, what I also enjoy with Civil War personally is the fact that it was really, like you said, like, you're watching heroes fight each other almost. You're like, because they're just arguing about, like, their ethics and morals, really, like what is right versus what is legal,
and both of them have good points.
Exactly,
for sure. Like, both sides have valid points, and they're fighting for what they believe in. It's just crazy that it's heroes
versus heroes,
against one another. And like, Tony Stark is a dick. Like, everyone knows that, and that's just the character he is. And Captain America, Steve Rogers, is kind of too much on the good side, like goody, like, oh well, like, we're doing good things, like, why should we have to do this? And like, they both have good points, but they also are so dumb in other points as well. Like, and what I enjoyed about it was also being a Spider-Man fan. Like, Spider-Man has a huge part to play. Like, Spider-Man unmasking himself in that,
it's a big part of
that's
that story.
Iconic, right?
Exactly.
And for Tony's side, that's the biggest deal ever. That's why, like, when Spider-Man for the MCU was gotten for Civil War and like through Sony and stuff, everyone's hyped, and I was thinking, but we don't know, like, Spider-Man's not important.
Yeah, no one's gonna be like, oh my gosh, Peter Parker, this kid from Queens.
Yeah, and they never do unmask him, right? But for me, that was one of the most iconic parts of the story.
Yeah, you know, exactly.
And him switching sides after that, right?
Great.
When Tony crosses the line and stuff, and obviously Cap just, anyone that ended up changing sides, Cap takes in, because, you know, that's just who Captain America is. But overall, I would say it's just a fun but complicated story, and I enjoy the complexity of why they're fighting and kind of like the politics behind that. I think is interesting, but also I do enjoy when the heroes do disagree. I think that is something that doesn't happen enough in comics.
That's fair. No,
or I guess it does now, but
it does nowadays. But also, yeah, at that point, but it was like very unheard of that heroes versus heroes was gonna actually be a thing, right?
Yeah, for sure. It's like also why I'm sure potentially on your list will be X-Men versus Avengers.
Potentially,
but those stories are definitely, they're eye-catching.
They are. I agree.
They're definitely like something that makes you go, ooh, that's different. Which is why they can't do it too much either, because then
because then it just becomes like the norm of
it'll become stale. Yeah.
Another storyline where the heroes are fighting the heroes.
Oh my gosh!
Oh, wow, that is fair, man. But All right, so my number 4 is something you briefly mentioned for your number 5, actually. My number 4 is Old Man Logan.
Yep.
Of course, me being the big X-Men fan that I am, love the Old Man Logan universe as a whole. A lot of people don't know that there's Old Man Logan, followed by Dead Man Logan. There's also an Old Man Quill, an Old Man Hawkeye, and there's another like follow-up ending to that called the Avengers of the Wastelands.
Oh, I thought they were going to call it the Old Avengers.
No, because all the Avengers are dead.
Oh, rough.
But no, I think it was a very interesting take in the fact that your Wolverine is pretty much this immortal character that can't necessarily die. Like, we've seen him die a couple times over the years, but he keeps coming back, you know?
Yep.
And you put him now super old. You jump 50 years essentially into the future almost, where all the heroes are dead and the entire world is just taken over by villains. And Wolverine's just trying to live his life as a farmer, just in the middle of nowhere, and he's just trying to have his good old life. And then things hit the fan, and next thing you know, he's got to bust out those claws again. And it's just a great, like, alternate take on a futuristic story, which then obviously eventually inspired the Logan film, like that older version of Wolverine who just not necessarily just wants to die, but just wants to be left alone.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
I feel like they didn't capture that too in the Logan film.
They did, I agree. They
Wolverine
did capture
wanting
it.
to be left alone.
Exactly. And I don't want to spoil too much about Old Man Logan, but like the reason why the mutants and the heroes aren't around anymore is dark. And it was it was a plot twist that I didn't expect, especially because I didn't read Old Man Logan until after Logan came out.
Didn't you? You read it. What was the storyline? Was it? It was like one of the big Marvel crossover events that they were doing at the time. Was it Secret Wars 3?
Secret Wars 3, I believe, yeah.
And then like they had the Old Man Logan come into the unit.
Old Man Logan,
and they had that like one shot of it.
Yeah, he had a 5-issue story because in Battle World during Secret Wars 3, they had all these different universes built into this map essentially. Yep. And Old Man Logan like climbed over, went into the Marvel Zombies one for a quick sec, and then jumped into like I think there was like a symbiote one as well. Until by the end of Secret Wars 3, Old Man Logan actually ended up being in the main continuity for a bit.
In the 616.
Yeah, he had his own series for that, and then he ended up getting pushed back into his own time, which was then he had a 12-issue storyline called Dead Man Logan.
Yeah.
And it was like a proper send-off for the Old Man Logan character. But regardless, it's just a great storyline for any Marvel X-Men fan or like Logan Wolverine fan. Like that is definitely a must-read.
It's like an iconic Marvel story.
Exactly.
Yeah. For sure. For sure. All right. So for me, this is one.
Number 3.
This one is one that it's definitely not controversial, but it's definitely one that's a little bit more out there for me, especially that Matt might think is out there for me. But mine would probably be the Dark Phoenix saga.
Really? Okay.
And I haven't read too many X-Men comics, but I remember the Dark Phoenix saga I enjoyed more via like a video that kind of went through all the it went through the whole story arc, but also the YouTuber went through how because they read it and they were like talking about their own feelings and whatnot. But I think I never expected it to be as dark as it was, and how it covered a lot of like topics that people are even too scared to cover today, which it makes it even more incredible that this story came out in the 80s, I'm pretty sure.
I think so, yeah, mid-80s or so.
So it makes it even more crazy to me, like some of the content that is covered, because it's not...
Well, it's funny to me because Marvel just seems like, when you think of Marvel versus DC, you think DC is just like so much darker.
It's got that little bit of edge.
Yeah, DC's got this edge. And you're like, Marvel's like, oh, look at all these pretty colors.
Oh, family-friendly.
Family-friendly. And then you actually start getting into the mythos of Marvel, and you're like...
There's some messed
people
up
are
stuff.
just dying left, right, and center. Like, what are they doing here?
I'd say that just the overall... The following of, like, Jean kind of losing it is both scary... Because, you know, there's, like... It makes you think of, like, everyone's got that dark side within, like, that dark part of them. Obviously, within Jean, it happens to be an actual entity.
The Phoenix entity itself.
But it's crazy, like, the strain it has on her relationships and how too much power can be a bad thing, you know?
Well, it's insane, right? Because it's something that's arguably relatable too, right? Because it's you're like you said, like you're seeing like everyone kind of has like this darker side of them, right?
For sure.
And even inside the Marvel universe, you're seeing all these like teenagers, kids in their early 20s with all these mutant powers. And how are they supposed to able to control it? So obviously they're gonna go a little unhinged from time to time.
For sure.
But moving on to my number third. I don't.
My number third.
My number third. My top.
My number
three,
third.
Three number trois. This is one I don't think you would expect me to have on this because I don't even know if you know too much about this one. It is literally from about 4 years ago now, and it's from the Avengers 2018 lineup. It's the one I'm currently reading right now, but it's the first volume. It's called The Final Host, where we get introduced to the Avengers of the 1 million BC. So also known as the prehistoric Avengers. And it sounds so weird and so cheesy, but on this team you have Okamoto himself as the Doctor Strange character. You have the first ever King of Wakanda. You have the first ever Iron Fist.
I think I remember you telling me
I
about
think I
this
briefly
story.
told you about this, yeah. We have the first ever Phoenix entity, like, coming to Earth and possessing, like, a cave lady. You have Odin there with Mjolnir, being, like, the Thor aspect. You have a Starbrand, and then my personal favorite character of this is Ghost Rider, but he's riding a mammoth.
Yeah, you've definitely told me. See, you know what I have issue with stories like this? With the old, this goes for, like, the Justice Society kind of thing, too, is I hate the idea that, like, the Avengers is this thing that came up, but then they make it seem like the Avengers has always been a thing. I hate when, like, that kind of happens, because canonically, in terms of, like, why doesn't anyone know that?
Yeah,
like,
that's fair.
Why
yeah.
wouldn't Odin be like, oh, you're part of an Earth team like I was? Like, what, Odin's not going to mention that? Like,
Well, I mean, they kind of did talk about it in the Final Host on, like, reason why they don't talk about it and everything like that. And it has to
they
do
have
with...
a pinky swear or
They
what?
have, yeah, definitely. Well, most of them are dead, obviously. Like, of that entire group, like, we know that there's a newer Spirit of Vengeance, obviously. The Kings of Wakanda have been passed around. Agamotto's long dead in the Supreme lore. Like, all these characters are dead except for Odin. So, it's part of, like, they kind of talk briefly throughout the series that, like, Odin is left with this guilt, knowing that he's the last one alive of this group.
Okay.
And they talk about it throughout it that they didn't even get along. They didn't really want to be a team, but they had to join together to stop a Celestial. And, like, it kind of it ties a lot in with the Celestials and everything like that. And even with comparing that to the modern day Avengers team that was kind of being created,
Yeah.
Loki found out about this whole, like, Celestial and, like, the Dark Celestials. He's like, I'm going to remake the Avengers team.
Oh, no, not Loki. You're doing something like that.
Crazy, eh? So he, like, kind of, like, gets a group to try and, like, come together to make this Avengers team and everything like that. But it's just something new and added to the Marvel lore, which may seem cheesy, but realistically speaking, there would have had to have been a first Iron Fist. There would have had to have been the first King of Wakanda. There would have had to have been that first Ghost Rider. Like, it didn't just... Like, the cowboy Ghost of, like, the Spirit of Vengeance, that was definitely not the first one, obviously, right?
Right.
So it kind of added a lot of lore to be like, you know, I guess it could make sense that there could have been a mammoth riding Ghost Rider, or, you know what I mean?
For sure.
Or obviously, like, Thor, during that time, would have been younger and would have been bouncing between Midgard and everything like that and just having a good old time. You know what I mean? They talk about briefly during this time how Odin's, like, a huge drunk and stuff, too, so... But I don't know, it's something different, and it just added a lot of mythos to what the current, like, Marvel comics is going with. But yeah, figured throw something different on there, too, you know?
Something also more recent.
Yeah, exactly. Something like, last couple of years. So we got the top two left. What is in your 2 spot? Is it Superior Spider-Man?
And number 2 is Superior Spider-Man.
What? No.
Which obviously we've already covered. But yeah, for me, being a less Marvel fan, I guess, in terms of the comics and stuff, and reading far less than Matt, and just being a massive Spider-Man fan, I thought that Superior Spider-Man was a very unique take. I know that at the time when Dan Slott killed quotations Peter Parker, people were unhappy, to say the least. But the way he took the Superior Spider-Man route, and the way Doc Ock, and even the consciousness of Peter being there in the background, I thought it was so well done, and it was something. It was a real breath of fresh air with the character. You know, I feel like Dan Slott, he had a story to tell and he told it. And I feel like, you know, no matter how much hate and how many death threats he got, he told the story he wanted to tell when it came to Superior, and I think he did a fantastic job of telling it.
I agree. And with Dan Slott alone with writing Spider-Man, like, they're like, I felt like at one point they're like, Dan Slott, just do whatever you want. He's like, all right, I want to get every single Spider-Man from any continuity, multiverse. We're going to make an entire story about that.
Actually, fun fact, I went to, I forget what year it was, but when I went to Fan Expo in Toronto, Dan Slott was one of the writers that was featured, and I went to go get couple books signed. Actually, I think I only got one book signed, but I got one of my Spider-Man comics signed by him. I think it was the Amazing Spider-Man when they like did the reboot back to #1.
Yep.
Can't remember if it was that I got signed or if it was the final issue of Amazing Spider-Man before they went to #1. Like before the, I think it was like 700.
700, yeah, with the Venom kind of cover and stuff like that. Yeah.
It was, I can't remember which one. I would have to check my comic books, but it was one of those that I got Dan Slott to sign. But while we were in line, it was a big line, to say the least. He was working on Spider-Verse at the time.
That's crazy.
Not like currently writing it, like it wasn't being released, but he was telling us about it. And he was like, no one record this, and like he made sure that like people put their phones down, and he told the story about like his pitch to to the writers and the staff, and being like, this is what I want to do, and it was pretty cool. It was surreal to see Dan Slott and he was hyped.
Yeah,
like
it's a great storyline.
He is a passionate man for the writing he's doing. Like it was like a kid in like a candy factory, like in terms of like the excitement on his face, telling all the fans about the Spider-Verse and his idea and how like he's like. And then when they said like when they greenlit it, he was just like, I was like, what? Like what's happening?
Sounds like Dan Slott. But I'm not surprised. I knew Superior. I'm very curious what your #1 is then, because I half expected Superior Spider-Man. Part of me thinks I know what #1 is, but we're not going to mention it because obviously that's your job. But my #2 is something you also mentioned in a previous one, is Avengers versus X-Men. This storyline is intense right from the get-go, right to the very end.
Tensions are high.
The tensions are high. People get divorced after this.
People are getting divorced because of this. In real life, die. In the comics.
All of the above.
What side are you taking?
But it was so cool because you had the Phoenix entity come back to Earth, and you just have 5 X-Men just stand in front of it at the last second. And you have like Emma Frost, you got Cyclops, Magic, Namor. You have just all these different mutants with the power of the Phoenix Force, essentially unstoppable. Right? And it's one of those things that the Avengers wanted to protect someone, and the X-Men are like, no, we want to protect her because she's one of our own, kind of thing. Which obviously created the conflict of Avengers versus X-Men. But right down to the very end, like, I remember I got the feels right at the end when they make a hardcore decision, which I don't want to spoil it in case you read it, because in case you haven't read it, you definitely should if you're a Marvel fan. I mean, I think I've said that for almost all the things I've suggested.
Yeah, we'll do a spoiler warning.
Yeah, we'll do a spoiler warning here.
And then, so if you haven't read it and you want to read it, this is your opportunity to pause.
Skip like 30 seconds ahead, you know.
So Matt can say it.
But like they kill off Charles Xavier at the end. Scott just murks him with the little just laser beam. Kills kills Charles Xavier, yep. And it's just the line of like, Scott, you were like a son to me and everything like that, and just Scott being like, you were never my dad, and just intense, ruthless. And it's just intense. And yeah, that's the end of the spoiler warning there.
Yeah, so that hit you in the feels.
It hits me in the feels, honestly, that entire storyline overall. And the artwork is great.
Would you say that is the most, like, heart-wrenching you felt reading a comic?
Ooh, that's a good question. I think so, honestly, because it was something... Because in Marvel, DC, whatever comics you read, they never want to just, like... Unless it's, like, certain characters, like Batman's parents, Uncle Ben.
Right.
You know, unless it's, like, core characters that need to stay dead. It was very unheard of that they were like, we're just going to kill this big character.
Yeah, like
and just
an iconic
leave
character.
it for a good few years. Because I think that particular character came back, I think, 2 years ago. So I think it was like a good 6 years that character was just gone.
Well, he was gone for a bit. Remember, well, without spoiling it again, but he was like part of that character was inside another character.
A little bit, yeah. I got a little convoluted, but that's X-Men for you.
But yeah, that was But yeah, so he has returned.
Yeah,
now.
he is returned in the present.
And whatever
Jonathan
Marvel
Hickman.
way they do, whatever way they bring
Marvel
it
be Marvel. No character really stays dead. But
yeah, that's the classic. That's the classic comic.
But he stayed dead for more than 2 years, so that's a win for me.
That's fair.
All right, do you have any honorable mentions?
I don't have really any honorable mentions for Marvel stories. I think, if I was, honestly, I'd probably put X-Men, like the X-Men versus Avengers. That would be another one of the few X-Men stories that Matt has forced me to read. But
enjoyed it.
Yeah, but obviously, it's not like I didn't like it while reading it. I've read a couple classic stories too, like Death of the Stacys, like that arc. For Spider-Man, which was good, and also kind of it does hit you in the feels. Obviously, you know what's happening, but it's just like that, what would you do?
Yeah.
Dilemma kind of thing. I've read stuff like the Infinity Gauntlet and Ultron, and they're
not bad. They're good. There's a reason why they're popular.
Yeah, for sure. And they just didn't do it for me. So for me, I guess my honorable mention would probably go to the X-Men versus the Avengers.
Okay. Personally, there's two that comes to mind that I wanted to throw on this list, but I just couldn't fit it. If it was a top 10 list, they've definitely been it. One of them is the Agent Venom storyline they did for a bit.
Oh yeah, Matt loves the symbiotes.
Loves the symbiotes. Both my honorable mentions are both symbiote
because they're annoyingly complicated. That's why Matt loves all the stuff that's complicated. Green Lantern Corps, Matt loves
super complicated.
X-Men,
if you don't know it.
Loves them.
Convoluted. I love it. But no, yeah. So Agent Venom, you got Flash Thompson, the high school bully from Peter Parker's high school, becoming this symbiote character, and the design is great, the storyline is great. And then my other honorable mention would probably be a storyline called Lethal Protector. It is the Venom storyline after Carnage has been created, but it's when part of Venom gets kidnapped by the Life Foundation. It's kind of what they inspired the Venom movie.
Okay.
But basically, they end up getting part of the Venom symbiote, and they end up taking 5 separate strands to make 5 new symbiotes. And I think those symbiotes are still alive in the main continuity right now, but that's Screech, Scorn. I'm trying to remember the other ones on the top of my head. But there's a purple one, a yellow one, an orange one, a green one. But if you're a fan of the Venom symbiotes and everything like that, definitely check out Lethal Protector. There's a novelization of it, or there's a graphic novel version of it. But as a Marvel fan, if you love the symbiotes and you haven't read it, give it a try. But anyways, we're moving on to our number ones of our Marvel comic book stories, our favorite ones. Connor, what is your number one?
What do you think my number one is?
I'm thinking it's Spider-Verse.
It's
Spider-Verse.
Yep. So my number one goes to The Amazing Spider-Man, The Spider-Verse. For me, it was definitely when I was in the thick of it in terms of collecting comics. I'd already been reading Spider-Man for a while. And it was something that, like I said, mentioned before, Fan Expo had Dan Slott hyping it up before it was even confirmed writing kind of thing. And for me, it was a big, I don't want to say big deal, but for me it was something cool to that I was actually super hyped for in terms of comics. It was that first holy crap, this is going to be cool.
It's a big storyline. Right?
And the build up to it was cool because we had the introduction of Silk.
Yeah.
Which epic spider suit, by the way.
For those who don't know who Silk is, got introduced in the original Sin storyline. Basically, there was a girl that was there near Peter when he got bit by the spider. She also got bit by the spider and kind of went on her own journey. Great character, something newer to the mythos of Marvel that I don't think really had too much hate until she got her own series.
Yeah,
the series was kind of iffy, but
yeah, her own series is I collected it for a bit and it just wasn't for me. But I loved her introduction originally when she was in The Amazing Spider-Man when they introduced her, and her dynamic with Peter and stuff is very interesting. So cool suit also, like I mentioned, if you've got a cool look, I'm already over half sold.
Spider-Gwen.
Same. Spider-Gwen, unreal. Like, if I was to pick a Marvel waifu, that's
Spider-Gwen, yeah.
Spider-Gwen.
Also, Ghost Spider.
Not from Into the Spider-Verse, though.
No, not from Into the Spider-Verse, no.
That more like what the original comic, like her comic introduction.
Would Spider-Gwen be your favorite Spider-Man that I get, like, from Spider-Verse, or do you have, like, a favorite outside of, like, the main Marvel 616
other than
Superior?
Other than 616, Peter Parker, you know, I'm a big fan of the OG. I would probably say, Spider-Gwen is... Spider-Gwen. And I love Spider-Gwen's story, too, with Peter. Like, the dynamic of her universe with Peter is very interesting. Like, you feel like Peter, in her sense, would be, like, the Harry Osborn. Right? Like, he would probably take on, like, the Goblin-esque.
Well, I think in Spider-Gwen's world, Peter became the Lizard, right?
Yes, he became the Lizard. That's why it would have been cool. Like, you would have thought, like, your first thought would be that, oh, if Peter is, like, her best friend or her friend, that it would be, you know, it would be, like, the Goblin taking over that kind of Harry Osborn-esque role for her. But, yeah, the Lizard was different. Like, this is unexpected that that would be the take they go for Peter Parker. But going more into the Spider-Verse, the thing I liked was they had all of the one-shots introducing all the different Spider-Verse characters.
Edge of Spider-Verse, I think it was called.
And that was a good way of getting an introduction to all the characters. And then going into the actual story, which was something I wasn't super familiar with the Inheritors as a villain. And they are some messed up
messed up family of villains.
And, like, they're crazy. And, like, when the villains are good and the heroes you're following are good, like, it's hard to fail, you know? Like, and why do you think, like, the actual Into the Spider-Verse movie is so popular? It's because it's so cool. It's so cool and funny and interesting to see all these different Spider-Man characters doing their thing.
No, I 100% agree. And I think, like, personally, because we read Spider-Verse essentially at the same time, and we were always... Like,
because we were both collecting it and reading it,
And we were just talking about it. And I think it was interesting, too, where with Spider-Verse, if you didn't relate with one Spider-Man, you would relate with another.
Yeah, and you can
definitely... a little bit of everything.
Well, I remember, like, talking, like, you really liked Spider-Man Noir.
Yeah, Spider-Man Noir, the 1930s style Spider-Man.
So it's true. Like, if there's a Spider-Man for everyone.
There's a Spider-Monkey.
There's a Spider-Man for everyone, you know? Like, if you don't like one, then you're gonna like one.
Exactly.
Obviously, it also stemmed other cool stuff, like the Venom... There was a Venomverse too, right? Or something?
Yeah, so there was a Venomverse, Edge of Venomverse, an actual Venomverse, and then there was a sequel called Venomized.
So it sparked other similar series. Obviously, when you introduce the multiverse and things can get complicated, and then it just, you know, once Marvel sees some money, then they're gonna do it with everyone. And it did. I think the popularity of the comic made it possible to do that animated movie, and the animated movie was great.
Successful.
It may have not focused entirely on Peter, which is fine. I think Miles is a super interesting character from his own standpoint, and I thought it was cool that it wasn't just the story, like the Spider-Verse story. I know that there were some people who were complaining that what's the point of doing an adaptation of a story but then not following the story? But it was fine. I liked it from Miles. It was close enough where you still got to see some of the Spider-Man you know and liked from the comic book, and it was fun. It was a fun movie, and I don't think we would have anything that cool without Dan Slott's contribution.
I think it's a good time also to make note that later this year we are getting a new storyline, a follow-up to all that called The End of Spider-Verse.
Yes.
Also written by Dan Slott, so we know it's going to be good.
Yes, that is...
Kind of scared for it, not going to lie, because it feels like part of me is like it's the end of almost like an era.
I'm not actively collecting comic books, but it almost makes me want to actively collect that series.
Particularly that series, definitely.
We'll see. We'll update you guys if that's what me and Matt end up doing, but definitely interested in reading it for sure to see what Dan Slott has in store for us.
Has in his little pocket.
All right, Matt. On to you.
What do you think my top one is?
Honestly,
I don't know if...
I would have thought it would have been the Avengers vs. X-Men. I'm not going to lie. I thought that was going to be your number one.
Really? Okay. Well, my number one is a storyline called Battle of the Atom.
Battle of the Atom.
Yeah.
Okay, that's fair.
This is one like when I was reading it, I talked
Matt doesn't
about it
shut up about. Yeah, that's
a
fair. I should have known
lot.
that. I should have known once it wasn't on the list.
Yeah, you're like, why? Where is this? No, Battle of the Atom is a continuation almost of what happens at the end of Avengers vs. X-Men. Without going into too much detail, present-day Beast goes back in time to get the original 5 X-Men pre-Blue Beast.
Wouldn't be X-Men without time travel.
Exactly, and there's literally, in the Battle of the Atom graphic novel, there's literally a joke about that, where Iceman goes, well, we wouldn't be the X-Men if we're not doing something stupid with the timeline, which is 100% accurate.
Very self-aware.
Exactly. But you literally have the 5 original X-Men. For those people who don't know who the original 5 X-Men was, Jean Grey, Cyclops, Iceman, Angel, and a human-looking Beast. Just had big hands, big arms, no blue fur yet.
What a beast.
What a beast. But Beast present day ends up bringing the original 5 X-Men to the present time. All heck goes loose, and 2 separate future X-Men teams come from the future to the present time to be like, y'all need to fix what the heck you're doing. And they all have a giant brawl. The best part about it is that Iceman is on all 4 teams, so you get to see 4 very different versions of Iceman. And I think this is when present-day Iceman fully understands that he is an Omega-level mutant, where he realizes that he's literally able to conjure up life out of, like, Elsa style from Frozen, like, really able to, like, create life out of snow and ice, and really able to understand that he can literally manipulate the water molecules right down to freezing someone from the inside out, essentially. Like, he is...
It's like a bloodbender.
Almost like a bloodbender, almost, kind of thing, you know?
His power is more than just what he initially thought.
Exactly. But it's great, honestly, and it's, for me being a huge X-Men fan, love me seeing alternate versions of characters, bring the OG, and literally just have everyone be like, what the heck is going on? Why is there so many mutants of so on and so forth? You get to see other future versions of other characters, including Colossus with a handlebar mustache.
Oh.
So that's always a fun one, too. But definitely, yeah, just it's a good story.
Who's the writer for that?
Don't know on the top of my head. It was before Jonathan Hickman took over the X-Men mantle. Let me just see here quick. But Jonathan Hickman has been doing a lot for the X-Men community. Oh, this makes sense. It was Brian Michael Bendis.
Oh, okay.
Who is a big writer inside Marvel Comics. He wrote some of the Ultimate Spider-Man. He did the bit of Daredevil over the year. He wrote House of M, I believe. Mm-hmm. Same with Secret Invasion. Did Age of Ultron, Civil War 2. He helped out on all these big projects over the years. So it makes sense on why Battle of the Atom is so good.
Yeah, for sure.
Because you have a strong writer. It's similar to Dan Slott, right? Like, if Dan Slott didn't write Spider-Verse, who would? It wouldn't be a strong story. Unless it was another big writer.
For sure. And Dan Slott definitely feels like, you know, at the time, Marvel was like, do what you want.
Yeah, exactly.
Like, after Superior, which you can make an argument is one of the most controversial things Dan Slott did, I feel like after the success of that, Marvel was like, you know what, we trust you. You
do whatever you want, dude. Which is ironic because it kind of reminds me of Stan Lee when he first created Spider-Man, where everyone was like, the sidekick can't be the hero. Like, this is ridiculous. This is not going to sell. And then here we are, later this year, the 1000, like I don't even know how to pronounce that really. Like the 1000th issue of Spider-Man is coming out later this year.
And like, obviously one of the highest,
most successful. He has
successful
arguably the most movies next to Batman.
And probably, I'm sure, in terms of money made, in terms of memorabilia and stuff, he's right up there.
Yeah, I mean, there was even like the Japanese Spider-Man. You have all the animated shows over the years.
Yep, all the animated shows, all the movies, all the memorabilia and stuff you can get for him. I mean, every kid probably has dressed up for Halloween. I feel like almost every boy has dressed up as Spider-Man.
At least once. Either for Halloween or for a costume party, something. Like everyone...
And everyone knows who he is.
Exactly. Everyone knows Spider-Man. You're not going to go somewhere and be like, what's with that weird web-looking face?
Yeah, it feels like for the most part, you can almost go anywhere and they're going to know who Spider-Man is. That's how well-known and worldwide he is.
But yeah, in conclusion, there is our top 5 Marvel storylines.
Do you want to go over it one more time? What our top 5 list actually was?
My top 5 was number 5, Superior Spider-Man. Number 4, Old Man Logan. Number 3, Avengers of the 1 million BC, aka the Prehistoric Avengers, specifically Volume 1, The Final Host. Number 2, Avengers vs. X-Men. And number 1, Battle of the Atom.
Yep, and mine was Death of Wolverine, then going into Civil War, the Dark Phoenix Saga, Superior Spider-Man, and ending off with the Spider-Verse.
Good old Spider-Verse.
Awesome.
But in conclusion, guys, remember to always drop a review. Let us know if there's anything you want to talk about in future episodes. What are your guys' top 5 for Marvel storylines?
Yeah,
let us know.
Definitely. Let us know your top 5 for Marvel storylines. I'm intrigued to see what you guys are reading, if it's current stuff or if it's past stuff.
And let us know what your guys' opinion is on our top 5. Do you think Spider-Verse or Battle of the Atom are good storylines? Like, do they even belong in your personal top 5? You can comment anywhere you can find us, either on the Twitter, on the Instagram, on the YouTube, and you can always catch us doing more Nerdy Misfit podcast episodes here on Spotify for new episodes and content. Remember, I'm Matt.
And I'm Connor.
We'll talk to you guys soon.